Go reading. So here's the Energy Twister T16 Nephalem Rifting build, Legacy of Dreams. It's going to be a Legacy of Dreams build, so it may take a little while to get a decent base of Ancients, but you should be able to start out on T15, move up to T16 if you want to start with this build even, and it's a super easygoing build to play. I mean, you really don't have to manage much here. You might be freaking out because Twister is typically now, with the revised edge sigil, put together in a channeling configuration, but don't fret. T16, we get rid of the channeling items and we're going to go manual casted Twister. So something interesting that, before we dive in, that was affecting this build from performing earlier in the PTR was they had made a change to the tick rate of the Twister, like how fast it deals damage, basically damage over time when it's over targets. And the tick rate was reduced basically by half, and this made it extremely difficult to deal damage to enemies, especially in Nephalem Rifts, where the Twister might just pass through an enemy and like never deal damage to them, and you're like, what the heck? But thankfully they've reverted this. It's now, the tick multiplier is now 2, which means you should be dealing damage about once every half second, so that's very good indeed. We're choosing a different rune here. You'll notice I'm choosing the Mistral Breeze rune for those cost reductions, getting up to 29% decrease to our cost here just from that alone. And the reason we're able to do this is because the Twisted Sword has been revised. We now get the Raging Storm rune for free, and you can stack the Tornado up to 3 additional times, so 5 times total. That's on top of the multiplier here already stacking up to 5 times. So as you can see, it's of huge benefit. The Twisters themselves, even the Cold and Fire rune, like they're going to have like a larger AoE. So it's a lot easier in a Nephalem Rift especially to hit enemies with the Twister after you've combined it at least once, which is quite nice. I'll say so myself. It feels really good. It's a super smooth build, really easy to play because we've removed the channeling component. We're not really, you don't really have anything. There's no autocast. All you have to do is teleport around and every now and again cast your black hole. And the reason we have black hole in the build is for the pull. Now you may be thinking, well, why would you need another pull? You've already got the Ransellor's Folly. And indeed, the Ransellor's Folly here are doing heavy lifting when killing trash. So the build like clears trash like nothing else. Like you drop a Twister down, it'll pull in a full screen's worth of trash and just blow them up, right? But the elites are the issue. So especially when you're a little bit lower Paragon, you might not have the damage to kill elites outright, and the Supermassive here is just really good at pulling in those ranged elites that like to disperse. You just plop this down, it pulls them in, and then you can lay into them with the Twisters. The problem is the Ransellor's does not pull elites. That's why we have to put a secondary pull in the build. But I do have some alternate variations here that if you wanted to play something different, we can take a look at that in a little while later in this mini guide. So in the meantime, let's take a look at the build. The core configuration here, I've made it free and easy to gear as well, meaning that we usually run the Edge Sigil in the source slot, but since we're not doing channeling, you can actually use any source, really any source that you find that's has the correct affixes. It's just a stat stick at this point. I actually liked just using it as a stat stick because it can be quite hard to get a Cosmic Strand, for example, to fill in that source slot. You have to do a lot of bounties and it's just troublesome. So we're running the Wormhole rune here in combination with our stat stick, and it's just free and easy. Resource is going to be taken care of mostly by RCR, resource cost reduction, and we're going to put that on the source, on the shoulder piece, the topaz and the helmet with a Leoric's crown. Unfortunately, this build cannot fit in the broken crown like I usually like to do for my LoD Nephalem Rifting builds to get those extra gems. You really need the resource cost reduction here. And then I put resource cost reduction on the weapon as well. Though, if you are earlier in Paragons, or if you just happen to find a different weapon You can run int on your weapon instead in place of the RCR, and place arcing power on crit on your source instead. You notice in this configuration I have vitality on the source and I gave up the APOC. But either of those is good. Just whatever you get is going to determine which configuration you run with, basically. We do have, so that takes care of your arcane power management. You're spamming out the twisters quite a lot, so that's going to be of importance. You have a lot of attack speed in this build, so gloves, you know, both rings if you can fit it in, and the weapon, going to be hugely important. I actually really like the Taurus's chest piece here as well, because here's the deal, like you could run a Cinder Coat here and go for fire synergy if you want with your Stone of Jordan to get 20% more element, but I kind of feel like the attack speed is better here, especially with the Twisted Sword stacking up to 5 times, and you have twisters that are combining. Just putting out more twisters per second means you'll generally have a better time in the Rift. So that's why we go attack speed there. We have, like I mentioned, the Stone of Jordan converting our element here, so you can, it's free and easy. You can choose any element. It doesn't have to be fire, it doesn't have to be cold, though those are more advantageous. You can opt for lightning or arcane as long as all of your elemental rolls on gear sync up with that. Now, that being said, we have the Stone of Jordan with element. We have the Swampland Waders. This is a Witch Doctor item, but if you're lower in Paragons, any old pair of pants will do. Just put that on instead. We do have the Bracer, and the necklace gives you a base of 80%. But like I was mentioning, if you have fire or cold, you can either opt for the Cinder Coat, or one of the alternate configurations I have placed is running the Winter Flurry. They did not remove the default for the Winter Flurry to roll cold damage, surprisingly. It astounds me. Yeah, I don't understand it, but it still rolls default cold damage. So that being the case, this might be a good pick for a source, and then you just sync up all of your elements with cold. So that's an option. There's also an option here for Explosive Blast. So if you want to run the Orb of Infinite Depth with the, and then you swap out the Black Hole for a little bit more toughness or multiplier. And this won't be up 100% of the time if you're running this version of the build, because you don't have a lot of cooldown, of course. But it's a nice perk if you want to run it and run an autocast or a numlock sort of build. I actually preferred the pull, so just having the Black Hole really felt a lot smoother. If I was to swap in a different source, I would opt for probably the Cosmic Strand. The nicety here is that you get Calamity on your teleport, and this not only returns, actually this configuration would probably do better by running APOC, so I will put that in. Int on the weapon, and then APOC here. To get returns from your Calamity, Arcane Power on crit returns from your Calamity, also stunning enemies. So basically this will be used as another means of crowd control on top of your Supermassive. So you won't have to cast Supermassive quite as much, but it's still nice to have, right? But you still get the double jump. So this was probably the most optimal, but harder to configure type of build to put together. And all of these versions perform very well. I'll have timestamps for at least one run of each configuration, and you can just take a look and see which one you prefer. I actually prefer this one, just running any old source with Wormhole felt really good indeed. Other items we're fitting in, we're running the Gloves of Worship, really nice for getting those shrine effects, Frenzied Shrine for increased attack speed, the Fleeting for more movement speed, pickup radius. We're running homing pads to get out of the rift easier at the end of the level. Illusory Boots, being able to move through enemies is going to be quite nice. The gold wrap, giving you your toughness here, combined with the Boon of the Hoarder for Avarice Band combo for increased pickup radius. Gold returns, secondaries on gear, keep an eye out for those especially. Squirt's Necklace rolls gold % by default, which is it's kind of a nice thing here. Higher Paragons, you're going to want to roll an elemental percentage on your Squirt's Necklace, but when you're at lower Paragon levels, just put int there. So intelligence on the amulet, and you should be fine. Yeah, it's just a really smooth build, really quick clearing. Unfortunately requires quite a lot of investment into resource balance. Otherwise, I would fit a few things differently here. But I will say this, after you put it together and it has a decent base level of damage, this is probably one of the quickest, most easygoing wizard builds that we've ever had for key farming in a season. So I will be looking to set this one up on my wizard. It's going to be a lot of fun. Anyways, hope you've enjoyed this. Oh, another mention, we do have the Aether Walker here. I forgot to talk about it, but this is how we're going to get through the rifts. The build itself excels on longer rifts because you can get through them so quickly. So even if it's like a really bad map, the fact that we have the Aether Walker and the Wormhole really means that you can just get through those bad rifts as quick as possible and still clear in a manageable amount of time. Basically reduces the maximum time it would take to clear a rift by a substantial amount. And there you have it. You have Unstable Anomaly for second life in case your Karidi goes down or you don't have Gold Wrap for whatever reason, which does happen at the beginning of the rift. We have Illusionist and the Boon of the Hoarder for increased move speed. The Wormhole itself is quite nice for managing arcane power. It cuts the cost of Aether Walker quite significantly. The GCD, of course, with Wormhole helping us to traverse, and then, yeah, it's just a well-rounded build. Power of the Storm coming in for cost reductions as well. Deflection, notably, when you are teleporting, will still proc. So you'll still get shielding as you're moving through the rift. This is very important to help keep up your Squirt's Necklace in combination with the Galvanizing Ward, of course. So just a super smooth build, and I hope you've enjoyed this little mini guide. We do have, notably, the Valthex Rebuke. This particular build, the effect doesn't really impact all that much, but your twisters will go in a straight path for the Nephalem Rifting build, so it has a multiplier on it, so yeah. Anyway, that's what we put in the 4th cube, and yeah, hope you enjoyed this build.